So after looking at the different stages in development of MIS and having an overall understanding of how MIS gets developed, let's get into the core of the issue, that is how do we model the data, how do we actually design an MIS, and within that the heart of the system is this data modeling. Let's look at that. As usual, I would like you to start with answering a few questions. So I have listed these four terms, and some of you may be already familiar with these. So why don't you take a small activity on Moodle and give your answer to these terms. If you are not aware of these terms, then you can wait for the presentation to be over, means this slide to get over, and then respond to this. So what does data mean? We have already seen data is nothing but raw facts. Right? Data types, that is integer, floating point, boolean. So these are different types of variables which any computer uses in storing the data. While storing, the data is can be stored in different ways or organized in different ways. The most classic example we saw was the flat files, in which each byte is stored one after another and it becomes a very long file, something similar to a text file that you may open. But then there are other more innovative ways of storing data. For example, arrays, which can be a 2 by 2 or a n by n matrix, and then it can also be multidimensional. It need not be a two-dimensional table. It can be having a depth. It can have multiple dimensions as well. Stacks, which is when you lay one on top of another, and the topmost item is easy to access, and the bottom, to access the bottom items, you'll need to first remove the top item and then see what comes next. Tree would look something like this, and the tree can represent relationships that are like a tree, for example an organization chart or a road network. So that is a tree type of a data structure. And then there are lists and linked lists and so on. So there are different types of or structure in which we can store a data. Next comes the database, which stores a variety of data, and this data is organized efficiently so that it consumes the minimum space. It is easily accessible, or it's accessible in a fast way, and it serves, a database typically serves more than one applications, multiple applications. Say one could be just storing data, another one could be creating reports, another one could be maybe doing some manipulation. So all these are different applications which is stored in a common database. To give an organization example, you may be having a common central database which every day records the attendance of employees. Then there may be another application for applying for leave, and then there may be a third application which generates the pay slip, which looks at basically attendance, leave records, and then uh, generates the pay slip looking at the number of days attended and the salary and other benefits, etc. So a single database is being used by three applications: attendance application, the leave application, and the payroll application. So this is about database. We'll want to know a little more about what database is. I'll take you to that real quick. So what is the specialty about this database approach is that it has these 5 features. It aims to control data redundancy. So any uh, excess data or any duplicates are controlled. It means they are not generated in the first place, or if at all they are generated, then there are features to remove those. And if for some reason you still want to keep them, then they are stored efficiently. That means a replica, let us say you upload 2 photographs which are identical, and you want them for some reason, then the database will not waste physical space on both of them. The database is smart enough to figure out that these 2 are both same photos, so it won't allocate extra storage space for that. It will keep a same copy and give you uh, it the same. So that is in terms of redundancy. It does not create excess unnecessary records. Next is it eliminates data inconsistency. That means, for example, the NIT has this NITRIS, which is a centralized database. And when you take admission, it asks you to enter your address, your parental address, mobile phone, and so on. Now, suppose sometime during your course, you need some document from NIT. Say you need a copy of your grade sheet, and it needs to be sent to your address. So at the time, if the form asks for address once again, the database eliminates inconsistency. That means if it sees that your old address and the new address are different, then it will either give you a warning, or it will tell you that do you want to correct the old address, or simply it will say it will not consider the new address that is given. It will just send to the original address. And the same thing can happen for maybe when you are entering your name, and if you are making a small typing mistake or some extra space bar or something. So all these inconsistencies are eliminated if it is a centralized database. So even if multiple users are logging in, and let us say some people are spelling Sundargarh, which is the district of Rourkela, as SUNDER, and some people are spelling it as SUNDAR. Uh, the database basically does not accept inconsistent entries. It will minimize those and take only one entry. Or when you are entering your name and your roll number or your Aadhaar card number, so it does not permit inconsistent entries under the same record. The third one, it has a centralized storage for multiple applications. That means if you have uh, uh, the example which we saw about the payroll and attendance and so on, and it's not restricted to one type of application. You may be having so many applications in a large organization, one for purchase, one for billing, one by finance section, and so on. So everybody uses a central location, so that when you place a purchase order, the party name is same as when you write a check for the party. So they are not different. Uh, then comes to, yeah, this is the physical part. I'll come to real quick, but the next one I'll take first. That is access control. The uh, same central database now carries all the records of the organization, or so many records. So it becomes important to not share all information to everybody, and also to not give the access to modify any records to all the people. You may want to give some access or some privilege to some users, but not everything to everyone. So for instance, the person who is tracking attendance of employees need not know what is their salary, or need not know when this person has gone on leave or not gone on leave. Similarly, the person who is creating the pay slip need not know some details. For example, what was the leave for? That the person who is creating the pay slip only needs to know whether the leave was authorized or not authorized. But at the time of authorization of the leave, the employee may have given some personal details, for example, someone passed away, or you have some medical issue or whatever. So although that need not be known to the person who is either recording attendance or creating the payslip. So this is how you would give different access to different people. uh, for the same series of data, for the same employees data, some items are visible to some people and some other items are visible to some people. In fact, there are organizations where the salary of an employee is not known to the manager, and for good reasons. Sometimes it may be that you're managing a person whose salary is either more than you, or it is uh, greater than what you used to earn when you were of his or her age. So you don't want all these things to interfere with the judgment of the employees and managers. So this is achieved through this access control. Similarly, let me go to the purchase and payment example. uh, the purchase person needs access related to certain items. For example, the item that is being purchased, what is the quality specification, and when it will be delivered, and all that. The person making the check payment or an online payment need not know all the details. That person only needs to know whether this item was supplied and is the payment due or not. So in that situation, I will again separate the access of the different departments within the organization, and different employees within the organization. So the person who is creating the purchase order has certain access to make certain changes, and the person who is making the payments in the finance section has some other access. Now lastly, I'll talk about this point about interface between physical storage and the logical view or the applications. So I would like you to look at this image which shows you that on the left hand you have the database, which is basically a storage. In the good old days it used to be on magnetic tapes, later it moved to the hard disk, which is still magnetic, and these days we have the solid state drives, something similar to your pen drive, but on a much bigger scale. So that is where actual data resides, but then that data is in bytes, or in format which is not interpretable by human beings. So you need a special purpose application known as the database management system. The examples we have seen, MySQL or Microsoft Access. So all these are your database management systems which help you in reading the data that is in the database, and whatever data you enter, this package converts it into those machine bytes and bits, and it stores in an efficient way, so that whatever you need more often, that is stored in a place which you can quickly go and check, and something which you don't need regularly, you keep it in a deep inside, which is not easily accessible. So within the disk there are areas which are quick to access, and there are areas which take a little longer to access. So you would want to make use of all this in an efficient way. So that is the job of the database management system. So if you look at the NITRIS, your roll number is something, roll number and name may be something which you need very regularly, whereas things like your grade or your address, you may not need regularly, right? And particularly if your grades are not very good, you would not want to access it very frequently. So that's what the database management system does, and it is a smart system in a way. It figures out what gets used more often and what gets used less often. If there is a student uh, who has either taken a break, or who has stopped the sort of course, or taken a leave from the course, then that person's record gets archived, means it does not get accessed that often, and the database management system is smart enough to figure it out. So it would store it far away in a location, whereas someone who checks their Netris account on an hourly basis or on a daily basis, their record would be more quickly accessible. So the other purpose that the DBMS does is to separate the logical view from the physical view, which means physically the data may be stored in any way, but logically it appears to you side by side what you want to see. So let me give an example of this Instagram. Many of you would have used it or know what it is. So in Instagram Reel, you upload different photos, and at a time thousands of users are uploading their photos who are unrelated to each other. But when it gets physically saved, they may be saved side by side, next to each other. As they are coming, the system is just saving them one after another. So it may happen that your photo is next to this Nick Jonas or Katrina Kaif or something, maybe because they are just randomly getting stored. But when it comes to retrieving, when you're opening the app or when someone is opening the website and clicking on your reel, then it is appearing in a logical way. If you click on a username, then that user's photos are coming one after another. So that is the logical view. Or it is coming in a sequential time. First the most latest one, and then the next, and then the last, and the last photo, the earliest or oldest photos will come in the end. So that is another logical view. But physically, it need not be that your last photo is stored in the end. Physically, it may be appearing anywhere. And as I said, physically, it's not that your entire reel is stored in a sequence on the database. So physically, I will look at the most efficient way of storing that the system algorithm decides. But when a user is viewing it, it will store it in the most logical way, or the way which the user desires. So that's the approach. These are the 5 things which database management system helps you in doing it. Just a quick recap. It minimizes or controls the data redundancy. There are no duplicates. It minimizes or eliminates the inconsistency. So a person's name is written the same way in all records, irrespective of even if the person typed it wrongly in one of the occasions. Then third, the multiple the multiple applications access the same centralized storage of data. Number 4 is separation of logical view and the physical view. Physically, the data may be stored differently, and logically it appears as you want. And last is access control, that the users who want to or who have a need to access, or who deserve to access, or who have the privilege to access, only get the access. And the access may be of different types. You may have only a read-only access, you may have write access, or read and write both access, and also a modify access. That's another category. So on the Instagram, you can modify, delete, or write your own photos. You cannot go and change someone else's photos, right? Similarly, yeah, so then comes to different types. I mean, we have something called as a RDBMS, which is a relational database management system, which basically assigns what different relationships are. We will be having a totally separate video on this. It's an important aspect of DBMS, object-oriented database management systems. And these days, in the world of big data, you have the concept of data lake, which is also another approach to this data management. We'll try to learn a little bit more about it later in the course, if time permits. So this is, broadly speaking, what this database management is all about, and it's an essential part of any MIS, because we would want all these benefits to come from your MIS, and which are not possible unless you have a sound database management system. Now, next, I'll take a moment to talk about this modeling, which is the topic of this video. So, what we try to achieve through modeling is to be able to represent the system, the MIS, in a way which humans can interpret or analyze or communicate with each other, and so that the model is what we want the system to be. And there are many ways in which one can represent these models. I have listed some of them. So number one is data dictionary, which we will look at in the next slide. Then you have process specifications. That means we tell what is going to happen in the system. You know, if I say hit submit, if I submit a form, what is going to happen? Let us say you are making a payment of electricity bills. So at the time you enter everything, and when you hit click, then there is a process that follows. The amount gets cross-checked with the server of the electricity company. The whole information passes to a bank or a payment gateway. Then there are a few things happen at the payment gateway level, and then a confirmation comes back to the website. Then you are displayed a receipt of the payment. So that is all the process which is specified in a certain way. Next, we have state transition diagrams. I spoke a few days ago about as is and to be. So you have an original as is state in which things are happening in a certain way, and you would like them to be in a certain way. So you draw what the state was or is as is, and what you would like it to be. So that's a state transition diagram. Other is a structure charts. So there are many. We will not sort of discuss about all of them. The most essential one is the entity relationship diagrams, which makes or breaks an IT implementation. So it's very important for particularly for managers to know what the entity relationship diagrams are, and are they correctly depicting my business reality or not. So sometimes what happens is the business reality is something, and your IT system is something else, and then it is of no use. Everybody curses the implementation, and the implementation is not successful, and there are so many failed projects that we see. So that ERD, entity relationship diagrams, is your crux of the whole IT system. I would call it the heart of the thing, and I have a dedicated video on that coming up. So there are many other tools such as structure charts and hypo charts, hierarchical input process output charts. Then Wiener-All diagrams, data flow diagrams. So there are different tools which one implements depending on the situation or requirement. So if you are an architect, then you may use one or more of these tools. We will not be covering all of them. I am looking at the three of them which are, I feel, most elementary and most essential: the data dictionary, the data flow diagram, and the entity relationship diagrams. So these three we will be looking at. Let me first take a few more points about this data modeling aspect, and then subsequent video we'll talk about the ERD. So talking about this data modeling, what we try to achieve through that is look at the data that the organization has. We analyze it and try to make sense of what is what, and identify relationships, so that all this can be taken to an IT system. That means all this can be digitized. So even before we had NetRace, we had roll numbers, and I'm sure all of you had your names, and some of the things which were not there before NetRace was in place. For example, nobody had a password. So some data may already exist and some gets created. as the IT gets implemented. But all of it needs to be seen. I mean, what is what, and where do we put it and all that. And for this, we create this thing called as this schema, which contains the names of fields. So you have a name, roll number, age, date of birth, address, and so on. Then types of fields, which is basically what will be the variable type. Will it be a string variable? Will it be a date variable? Will it be an integer? Will it be a file? For example, your photograph which gets uploaded is a file, an image file. So all these will be your different fields, and then one of them will be a primary key, which is what is called as which is the key which is a variable which uniquely identifies a record. So for example, your roll number is the primary key. No two students will have same roll number. There may be two students who share a date of birth. There may be two students who have same name. For example, 2 years back we had a student named Satyajit Raut, and we also had same name repeating last year and this year as well. So that's that cannot be a primary key, because if I go and look for the details, say grades in MIS of Satyajit Raut, I may end up seeing multiple entries. So I don't know who is who, but the roll number is unique. There will not be two students with same roll number at least for another 100 years. Maybe in 21 we may see same roll number again. So that is so schema tells me what will be the different fields or with different variable names, and which of them will be a primary key, that is your roll number. And another thing that the schema mentions is how many records do I see. So some databases have maybe thousands of records, some may have millions of records. If you go to something like Facebook, it has billions of records. So that has to be specified in the schema itself. Thus, this database contains so much of information or so many records, records. Like NIT at any point has about 7 or 8,000 students. And if we say that our database will remain for say next 20 years or 25 years, so we might need about 1 million records. We may want to keep some such number, 1 million, 2 million or 5 million as the possible number of records. Why we need to tell this in advance? So that the database system starts efficiently managing the data at this point itself. Then why we need to tell the name of the field and the type of storage? Again, same reason. So why we need a primary key? So that the retrieval and storage becomes efficient. That under the same roll number, so every entry that I am passing will have a unique roll number. So all these things are necessary, and this comes from the analysis of your raw data which is lying around in the organization. The next thing we need is some sort of a data dictionary, which basically tells me which table contains what data, how will I validate a certain data, who will have access to which field. For example, date of birth of a student. So will everybody get access to this, or will some people get access to this? Grades of a student, will everybody get access to this, or only some people will have access to it? Address, mobile number, and so on. So all this is also mentioned in this. Next is ownership. So ownership of most of your data is with you, except the roll number. You don't have ownership of roll number. Roll number is created by the academic office. So like that, then your grade is not created or modified by you. It is created by the concerned instructor. So all this is mentioned in a data dictionary, right? Now there are different methods or ways of defining this dictionary. So we'll look at one of them, that is called as this data definition language. And it's not a single language. I think there are multiple syntax or methods of writing this. What I'm showing is one of them. So this is an example of a railway ticket. If you book it on IRCTC or some such website, you will find that you have a ticket which has a train number, PNR number, serial number and a date, and it may have so many other information. But in this example, what I have seen is, so this is the notation equal to. When I say ticket equal to this plus this plus this plus this, what it means is the ticket contains all these things. And I'm using another notation which is plus, which basically is used to mean and. So a ticket contains, or ticket is composed of train number and PNR and serial number and a date. So all these things are put together in a ticket number. Of course, the ticket may also contain some other things like the seat number or the coach number and all that, or the name of the passenger and age and all that. But my definition is something like this. Next notation is range of values taken. This is something which we use for validation. So a train number is between 0 and what is it? 1 lakh? Yeah, 99999. So if someone puts a train number, say 75B, then it is not accepted because it does not fall between 0 and 99999. Or someone puts a train number of their mobile number, say 98989 31712. So if this 10-digit number is entered, it will not be taken as a train number. So this is what we mean by validation. It will not accept any letters and it will not accept any values outside this range. So sometimes you may want to give this range as a list. So for example, ticket class. A ticket class will be either sleeper, first AC, second AC, third AC, chair car, or maybe second seating, or unreserved, or some such classes, values. But it cannot be anything outside this. You cannot put, say, first class, because I have not defined what is first class. It can be 1A only. So that is another way of validating or data validation. Sometimes you may want to say, yeah, the other things are optional fields. A ticket can be made even without a date or a train number or a serial number. In India it is not possible, but abroad you often have such things, that you get a ticket without a date. It's an open ticket. Then other identifiers, for example, what is the file name? So this is booking, maybe .db or some such name. Who has access to it? User A, user B, user C. And who is the owner of this file or a record? So this is one data modeling language which is basically defining what different data means. Just to give you an idea, I'm also creating a small exercise on Moodle which I would like you to take and see whether you have understood this correctly. So this is broadly all I wanted to cover as far as the overview of data modeling is. In the next video, we will learn about what entity relationship diagram is, and then I will have a subsequent video in which I will close all these concepts. So I hope you have understood what is the purpose of data modeling. I am trying to translate the business data requirements into what the developer of a system, what the programmer of the system will need or will want to understand. So I'm translating that so that the system design is appropriate and it depicts the reality of what my business is. Right? So this is all I wanted to cover. In the next video, we will learn about the heart of this whole MIS development, that is the entity relationship diagram.